Okay, it's 7:30 and we had said we will start at 7:30. So I think we can begin, or should we give it another 5 minutes? Ambassador Akbaruddin, what do you think?
Well, I think we can start on time.
Yeah.
Punctuality is quite important.
Very important. So for all those who are here, I have to say we were getting a lot of requests about sort of people wanting to know about the MPP and hearing from you. So for all those who are here, I do presume you know who Ambassador Syed Akbaruddin is, but he's also the Dean of the Kautilya School of Public Policy, in case you didn't know that. And that's the capacity in which he's here today. So I just wanted to start this session off again by just speaking about a master's in public policy, because that's the question we've been most getting from students saying, can the dean speak to us about what this course is all about?
I can understand this is a question that bedevils many people. So I think it's a fair way to start. So let's start at the very beginning. A master's in public policy course is about holistic education to understand major challenges that we face at the local level, at the national level, and at the international level. And why do I call it holistic? That's because we could do a public policy course in perhaps 9 months or a year, because we can just focus on some specializations and say, you can try and focus on this, get jobs, and be done with it. But a master's course, by definition, teaches much more. And that is, it's a, if I may say so, a big tent approach. And what's the big tent approach? It is that we would like to be inclusive in terms of allowing people with different backgrounds to come and contribute to public policy. After all, public policy is not a elite elite practice. It needs to involve everybody because it impacts on everybody. And therefore, what we've done is we've provided a 2-year course which will give you a foundational background and understanding of what are the basic requirements to do well in public policy, and then channelize you into specializations. And why do we do this? And that's because we're not looking at people to get jobs immediately and be done with it. What we want to do is to inculcate among our students a longer term vision, which will enable them to grow once they move into different professions. So it's easy to upskill yourself and get a job, but it's more difficult to gain the skills that are necessary for leadership positions. And that's what we are training you for, not your next job, but for a lifetime of leadership. And therefore, that's why we have this much more holistic approach, a big tent approach, approach which involves people from diverse backgrounds who are first given a common platform, a basic foundation, and then on that basic foundation, we build specialization. So that perhaps also answers why it's a longer term course with 2 years rather than a shorter one, which can be done online or which can be done in a year, which can be done instantly. After all, instant efforts can yield immediate results, and I don't deny it. But if you want longer term results, you need to go through the whole degree of difficulties, understand issues in their complexity, and then be prepared for a lifetime of leadership roles.
Right. So I also want to tell our audience that if you have any questions for Ambassador Akbaruddin, please raise your hand and we will ensure that you're unmuted, put on your camera, and you can ask him your questions directly. Again, any questions that you have, and we'd like them sort of pertaining to, to Kautilya, please raise your hand and we will ensure that you can ask your question directly to Ambassador Akbaruddin. But, you spoke about that we don't just prepare them for their next job, but we prepare them for a lifetime of, very many challenges that they may face. Having said that, because Masters of Public Policy, perhaps not, people are coming to know of it. What they don't know is that practically every corporate coming to India, or so many of them, do have job openings in this area. Could you just give us a little context of what perhaps, Netflix or Amazon or companies like these have in the area of public policy?
So public policy is basically understanding regulations, influencing them, formulating them, implementing them, and articulating them. So each one of us can be involved in one aspect or the other. There are some who could join governments and formulate policies. There are others who can be outside and advocate policies and influence them, what we call as advocacy groups, NGOs, civil society organizations, etc. A third group could be those who communicate it, because making public policy is good, but effective public policy demands proper communication too. So that's an art by itself. You could be good at articulating a public policy, and that is a skill by itself. Finally, those who get impacted, and that's you, me, as well as corporates, who invest in public policy, would need to understand regulations. Increasingly, this is going to be the future in which everybody should be well versed. So let me give you an example of how corporates get influence and why they're looking at it. We just had our Prime Minister visit the US, and there was a lot of agreements on various things. They say from the stars to the oceans, or to the seas, and everything in between was up for discussion, and we've come to very many agreements. Now let's take technology. Yes, it's very nice to say India will now be producing semiconductors. But with semiconductors will come a whole set of laws, a whole set of regulations, which will not only impact those who produce semiconductors, but those who use them, those who will be impacted by them, etc. So get ready for new regulations. Who will create these regulations, or who will work on these regulations? By definition, governments need expertise of people who understand these, who understand the impact of these technologies on ordinary people, on vulnerable sections, on diverse segments of our population, and on companies too. So companies are always on the lookout for people who understand public policy, who can discern government regulations, who can help them advocate changes or influence them, and once decided, implement them. So get ready. I just had a friend from, let me give you an example. You quoted Netflix, but let me give you an example from Uber. And I was talking to him today. He heads one of the pillars in Uber relating to public policy. And he mentioned that they're already getting prepared for understanding regulations in every part of India, because transport is not a central subject. It's a state subject. Every state is trying to work ways differently. For example, licenses in certain states vary from other states. The fines vary in different states. The regulations in terms of compensation vary in different states. And if Uber, a transport company, or perhaps a digital company with no direct transport employees, needs to understand every aspect of the transport sector, the digital sector, so that they can then stay clear of the difficulties and maximize their investments when they do so. So who do they look to? That's why every company now has a burgeoning public policy segment. It's a it's a growth area, it's a sunrise area, and I'm certain those who invest now are investing in their futures.
Absolutely. So Kumar Saket has a question. Priyanka, can you please unmute him? And Kumar, if you can sort of, please come on and ask your question. You can put on your camera if you want, unless you're in bed in your pajamas, then that's all right too.
You're stumping him. Right.
I don't know if my camera is on.
No, it isn't.
No, we can't see you.
Let me see. I'm not in my pajamas, I can say that.
All right, you can ask the question. We can hear
let me ask my question. Yeah. So first of all, thanks, sir, for giving us the time. And I have a very specific question related to a public policy, which is women empowerment. And I'm completely up for it. Like women needs empowerment, and whatever government have been doing, they have done good. But I also want to say that this women empowerment is nowadays coming at the cost of disempowerment of men, because we have a lot of misandrist laws in the country, and which has led to a lot of false cases, and we have like 5 crore cases pending in the courts today. And what I see is that the governments are somehow not realizing that they are, through their misandrist laws, they are punishing law-abiding tax-paying men. So my question to you would be, does the government know that there are no checks and balances in the kind of laws we have in our country?
So Kumar, without taking sides on this, let me try and put it in another way. Public policies, by definition, are suboptimal. They are not the best of the top of the line things that you are used to. For example, if you want to buy something, you buy top of the line, it costs more, it's technologically very good, etc. Public policies, by definition, are suboptimal. And that is for a reason, and a very important reason. That reason is they try and balance out different segments of the populace. That means they look at some areas, some gain something, some don't gain something in any public policy outcome. And it is possible sometimes some people, and I'm not even commenting on the law that you are stating, let's leave that aside, but it is possible that there will be loopholes of a nature, but in general, the law would be better than what was the situation before. And otherwise, governments have no intention to to push through a law without at least thinking that it is for the best of a vast majority. And it's never a law will be optimal, meets everybody's needs, fulfills all requirements, doesn't have any loopholes. That's why when you work on public policies, you try and plug these loopholes to the extent possible. But we are all human. To err is human. And only gods or divine can forgive. So I don't know the specific instance you're dealing with, but I would think that in societies where for years people have discriminated against women, the effort to improve their lot is a good one. It can sometimes, in some instances, not work out to the full satisfaction of others, but it's not because of want of trying. It's because sometimes we don't, in design thinking, you don't design a law which is all-inclusive or a solution for all the problems. That happens only in mythology that you can find. I'm from Hyderabad. So there was, when we were growing up, a small little medicine called Zinda Tilismat. Strange name, but the ad for Zinda Tilismat was Har Marz Ki Dawa. There is no such thing as Har Marz Ki Dawa, but it was touted as Har Marz Ki Dawa. So when you study public policy, you will acknowledge that no law is a solution for all ills. And we need to keep that in mind. Ultimately, it's a balance of interest. It's a judgment call sometimes. like human beings, governments to err, and but there is scope that what has been formulated by human beings can also be improved by human beings. After all, it's not, public policy is not God's last word, or the Quran or the Gita, where you say, well, it can't be changed. Public policy will always keep on evolving, because human beings will find different ways to improve it. So let's leave it at that and look at these regulations, laws, efforts at empowerment, etc., in that context of a broad goal of trying to improve. Sometimes it works satisfactorily, sometimes not.
Thanks, Kumar, for that question. And you know, it was so interesting because as people, and I suppose as public policy experts and or officials, one would always try to do better. There's a question from one of the audience members that they've put in the Q&A, which asks, does each of the specializations to be chosen in MPP require prerequisite knowledge? And on what basis do students choose their specialization?
Right. So nothing in MPP requires knowledge or pre-existing knowledge. We welcome all conditions, including pre-existing difficulties. That said, what we do is, the way the course is layered is, in the first 2 terms, we provide you a foundation which will give you an idea of what are your area of interest, what may not be to your full satisfaction. And that will lead to ways of opting for any of the 5 broad rubrics. And these rubrics, like everything else, are not cast in iron. What we generally do is, we provide courses which can be cross-sectional in interest. Let me give you an example. So we have a course called Global Public Health. Now, you could look at it as a global affairs issue or an international relations issue. You could also look at it as a governance and society issue, because public health is at the domestic level, at the international level, at the theoretical level. So you can choose that subject and say, I'm not interested in international relations. This is only Ambassador Akbaruddin's interest. I'm interested in improving the lot of the people that I work with or in the region I work with. But without understanding the global dimensions of public health, you won't be able to do justice to the local or regional dimensions. So you can choose that subject, understand a little bit of the international imperatives, understand a great deal of the domestic imperatives, understand a little bit of science, and then decide, okay, I put it in my box relating to governance and society or technology. So because public health also has several technology dimensions. So, or else you say, no, I'm not interested at the local level. I want to do international relations. So you put it in the rubric relating. So you have a choice. Many of our courses are cross-listed across these 5 rubrics because nothing is cast in stone. We began this discussion by saying nothing is cast in stone. We need to be permeable, sometimes semi-permeable, and allow for people to use skills in different aspects of what they aspire for. So initial 6 to 8 months will give you an idea of what you think you can pursue, whether you're good at it, whether you have a passion for it, and then follow it up with choosing electives in those areas or shifting them somewhere else.
Right. So Bhupendra Singh Sisodia has also raised his hand. Priyanka, if we can unmute him. Bhupendra, you want to put on your camera and ask your question.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi. Hi. I have a question regarding how does the program treat political dimensions of public policy?
Can you repeat it? I didn't get you clearly. How does the program address public?
How does the program? How does the? Hello. Am I?
Yes. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. Bhupendra,
You've become mute. You've muted.
How does the program treat public policy, political dimensions of public policy.
Sure. Um, uh, Political dimensions are a key ingredient in every aspect of public policy. So there are some of our students who want to go into political consulting. So there are specialized ways of going into political consulting if you'd like to. A lot of political consultants come to us and select our students. But that said, what you need for anything is an ability to understand an issue, an ability to formulate the issue in words that you think will be useful to you, and then articulate it. What is politics? Politics is the art of explaining your issues in a manner which is coherent and understandable to others. So there are plenty of inputs of a political nature without taking a view. You just saw me reply to somebody else on a very controversial issue. Did you see which side I was on or which side I wasn't? It's an ability that you learn to try and articulate an issue, giving both sides of the view, and if you want, emphasizing on one side. Any political discussion also will need to look nuanced even while you promote your own goals. So we have a lot of, for example, for politics success, what would you need? You need to understand the Constitution. You need to understand what are the processes related to dissemination of information. So we have one of India's best constitutional lawyers teaching us Indian Constitution. You also have leading journalists come and teach you how to how to communicate. We have one of the best, finest teachers of public speaking, Dr. Steve Jarding, who comes from the US and teaches you the skills of public speaking. Ordinarily, do you know, such consultants charge a bomb. I know, having worked in international organizations and seen some of the leaders take those training, a day's training sometimes is charged at $25,000 to $30,000 or more. But when you come as a group, as students, you benefit from those advantages of students. So we get people who can teach you skills that will be useful in the political arena as well as in other arena. These are basic foundational skills. You can use them how you want. So without being politically tilting to one side or the other, that's your call. You will take that call. We will teach you the skills that will help you be successful in that arena.
Right. Thanks so much, Bhupendra. There is, since Bhupendra spoke about politics, and that's really like another job with so many now campaign managers and lobbying agencies coming into play. But let's just speak about a little more about other sectors. And there is a lot of interest in the kind of industry immersion that Kautilya provides. And you and I just met and we were talking about some of the splendid internships our students have got. So if you'd like to just speak a little bit about that.
So internships is a key part of our training. We are not an institution which immerses you only in theory land. We provide you broader aspects of understanding with practical exposure. So the practical exposure first starts in class by bringing to you experts who have domain knowledge and who've done well in industry, in government, in other sectors. So while we have our professors providing the theoretical underpinnings, we have people with professional skills and practitioners, if I may say so, whether from the corporate world or elsewhere, come and explain that sometimes theory doesn't work in practice and what they did to resolve issues. So it starts in the class, but doesn't end in the class. What we then do is that during the interregnum between the first and the second year in the summer break, we generally give a long break of about 2.5 months, of which 6 weeks every student is required to do an internship. Some students opt for industry, some others opt for political consultancy, some others opt for working with governments, some opt for working with think tanks. So let's try and tell you what sort of companies are recruiting or providing internships to our students. So I have two young, bright young students working in two very big companies and doing something that you would not think that they're doing. Most companies are now looking at setting up ESG units. What does ESG mean? Environment, society, and governance units. This is the new buzzword in the corporate sector. And where are they looking for candidates to provide them the wherewithal for setting up those units? They're looking at public policy candidates. So I have one from Ashok Leland, who is working near Bangalore, I understand, in the border between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka with Ashok Leland. Another is working with Jindal Steel in Mumbai. Both are setting up these units. Both young people are working in those units. And I've talked to their seniors who seem to be very impressed with what they're doing. And maybe by all accounts, they may just absorb them, won't leave them out again, because these days, talent is at a premium. Precious young people who do well are quickly grabbed. So that's the exposure you can get to industry. I've just given you two examples, but companies are reinventing themselves. So we all know, for example, of Philip Morris. We all know it as a tobacco company. And you know the constraints on tobacco company. It's now trying to reinvent itself as an ESG company, saying that its environmental footprint is reducing, it's focusing on other areas, etc. Again, where are they looking for young people? They're not only looking for people who understand engineering, technology, etc. They are also looking for people who understand public policy. So one young student is interning with them. Then there are the usual consulting agencies, quality control units, fintech companies, etc. There's a whole host of young people who are getting opportunities for internship, and should they want to continue there, or else they move on to other areas. They also do internship with government, with Niti Aayog, with Telangana government, some with Maharashtra government, depending on which area is of interest.
Right. I again want to say, if you have any questions, you can ask them directly. Someone called Dhara had actually put up her hand, but I can't, I think, so she has. Dhara, do you want to go ahead? Priyanka, can we unmute her, please? Yeah, there you are.
Good evening, ma'am and sir. I just had this question that if we are to opt for this master's in public policy, like irrespective of the specializations like which are offered, like generally we go for that we study these policies and everything at national levels and all, but I want to ask about the of public policy at international level or at international stage, in organizations like UN and its sub-organizations, that in what way or in through what like can we get a position there, and not in specialization but in general.
So we have a okay, let me put it another way. All organizations are on the lookout for talent. They also are on the lookout of talent with some exposure, especially those who are of the category you mentioned, whether they are international organizations or they are broader regional organizations. They look for people who understand specific issues. So what they look for is, while you may work with an international organization, how good is your knowledge of specific regional ground level issues? So if you want to say, for example, the EU you mentioned, the EU would perhaps be interested in gender specialist. So you need to understand gender, you need to understand some aspects of gender in a context, you need to have some work exposure at a local level, because if you go to the headquarters with no exposure or understanding of ground level situation, what do you add to them? Because opinion is a dime a dozen. Everybody has an opinion. When the Indian team is decided for cricket, everybody becomes a selector. Why didn't he take them? Why did he take them, etc.? These are all opinions. But people who have expertise, who have exposure and experience are chosen. So you can do that, but before that, you have to go through the rigor of having ground level experience. If you have that, it will get buttressed with a theoretical understanding of the issues, and then you stand a better chance.
Right. Thanks, Dhara, for that. And since Dhara spoke about sort of going on to a global level, there is also a lot of concern, and there is a question that, can public policy help devising national security policies or global security policies? Can somebody, after doing public policy, get into that?
So these are complex issues. Let's first acknowledge them. Defense, national security, international relations are complex issues because there are multiple stakeholders, multiple factors at play. And therefore, what you require is a rigor of exposure and experience of several years before you can start saying that I too would like have a chair on the table. To get to that chair, you have to prove yourself. So yes, we have a Lieutenant General who teaches strategy and how to prepare yourself on this. We have a course called Non-Traditional Security Challenges, because we all know how traditional wars are fought. We've seen it, done it, people have written about it, but there are a whole host of non-traditional challenges which are coming in the security domain. We saw in the pandemic how healthcare equipment was securitized or weaponized. You are seeing how financial transactions are being weaponized by unilateral coercive measures. There are several of these new sort of challenges which are coming up, where you are at least on a starting point with all others. And that's where you need to develop expertise, understanding, get more exposure, read about it, write about it, go and see research about it. And down the line, let me tell you, doors will open for those with expertise and exposure. And so many new things are coming onto the table that there aren't enough people who understand this. So if you devote yourself to understanding an issue, spending large amount of time and effort on an issue, you're certainly going to be wanted to be on the table, not only be on the table, but you'll be invited to be on that table. So work on it. Nothing comes easy. You have to put in the effort, and it's not rocket science. You can get there.
Right. Shakira Faruqi is asking if this is something she can do online. I'm sorry, Shakira, ours is a residential 2-year degree program. So this is not something that you can do online. We would like you to be on campus if you want to do this. But on that note, Ambassador Akbaruddin, is it all work and no play?
So you can work playful also. Let me put it this way. We have a cohort usually is 60% of people who've got work experience, 40% who come straight from college. So it's a good mixture. And what happens is, and I want to be honest with you, at the start, people are not used to the rigor of the course because they come from different backgrounds. It takes some time. So I know of students who in the beginning say, oh, this is very tough. I haven't slept for a few hours, etc. But I always tell them nothing happens. If you don't sleep for a few hours, a few days, nothing happens. I've lived I'm quite old, having sometimes not slept or a few hours slept. That doesn't matter. Nothing happens. It doesn't affect you. That said, once you understand the rigor, you understand the pace, then you are free to play around with many other things. And that's what our students do. They tell me, sir, at the end of the fourth, this is too easy for us. And then you can understand that they are now ready to move on. But if you want other activities, there are plenty of other activities. Our residential facilities, I wish as a student, I had those residential facilities. Wonderful rooms, gym, sporting facilities, tennis courts in the larger university. If you go to our website today, you will see there are photographs of all our students playing cricket. So public policy is also about playing.
I'm very happy to use the facilities even now, not just in college life. But okay, SR wants to know what are the major skills that need to be present while pursuing MPP?
So these are the skills that you develop if you want to be a good leader. So what are these skills? We started in the beginning by saying effective communication. So let me tell you, as a society, Indians are an oral tradition. We speak much better than we write. This is not a fault of ours, it's something in our genes. It goes back to the Vedas, etc. We are an oral tradition. We communicate orally, by rote, etc. So there's a challenge to upskill people who do not have the rigor in writing to do better in writing. So upfront, we start by teaching you how to write. It's a skill. That means it can be improved by practice. It's not a God-given talent or anything. It's just hard work that can help you improve. So that's one skill. Other skill is about oral communication, but in a way that is comprehensible. So usually when I teach, I tell my students, don't use more than 4 words or 5 words without a gap. It's not, oh, I said it yesterday to the professor, but he didn't understand me. Nobody is going to understand you. So there's no harm in using 4, 5 words, pause, because the human brain is geared towards understanding at best 6, 7. Keep within that range. So here's another skill you can learn. Again, it's a skill. Nobody told you about this so far. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If you would like to watch, look at all the great speakers. Some of you may have listened to Prime Minister Modi speak to the US Congress recently. Watch very carefully. He's speaking 4 to 5 words together, pausing. One of the greatest speakers that we've ever listened to, Prime Minister Vajpayee. He had long pauses. Nobody thought he forgot what he was saying. It was a reflective pause. It was an anticipatory pause. So there are ways in which you can improve your public speaking skills. That's another skill you will learn when you are studying policy. Let me make it more modernistic rather than go back only to the Vedas and about Prime Minister Vajpayee. How you depict data, how you use data and explain through graphs is another skill. Today, there are many software available that you can use and depict it differently, and you understand it much better than my 400 words to answer a question from any of your questioners. So how you use data to project, how you use graphs to project data is another skill. I could go on. How do you understand financial statements is a skill. You may not join a company, but if somebody shows you a balance sheet, you just need to know where is the credit side, where is the debit side, how do I need to work on these, what do I see is profit, where do I see is loss. It's again another small skill of understanding finances. So I can go on. Negotiation. It's a skill I pride myself on, but you can, the same type of techniques that you use in international negotiations can be used in corporate negotiations, can be used in interpersonal negotiations. So if you fought with your parent, you can use the tactics or the principles involved in what you've learned in class that Indian diplomats use. So there are plenty of these skills. In fact, we have 10 skill sets that we make it compulsory for our students to learn over a 2-year period. These are through what we call 1-credit courses, which are 10 hours teaching, the rest practice, and over 2 years, they do every term 2 or 3, etc., and gain some element of understanding and, of course, mastery if they would want to do so of those skills.
Right. I think negotiating with your parents is an excellent skill. I think if nothing else, just to sort of get that holiday out or whatever else, it comes in handy. Okay, Chaitanya Mohan Dugal wants to ask a question. Priyanka, can we please unmute him? Chaitanya? Yeah, there you are, Chaitanya. Please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am, for the opportunity. Jain sir, Jain ma'am, I am Chaitanya Dugal. I am a student of law in Delhi University. Sir, I wanted to ask the question regarding the public policy for environment, sir. Since I've done a master's in environmental studies, sir, I was very much keen into doing a master's in environmental studies along with shaping public policies, sir. While doing the master's course, I realized a lot needs to be done on the ground level, socially, and also policies need to be framed in such a manner, sir, that it's universally applicable, sir. Our country happens to have large diversity and different, we are blessed with different biospheres around the hotspots, different biosphere hotspots around the nation. So each and every policy is not suitable if we implement it. Some of the states have better policies, I feel, sir. So regarding...
So you're right, right. Chaitanya, in fact, for the next batch, we are introducing a new rubric called ESG, Environment, Society and Governance. One of the, so let me try and tell you the breadth of that rubric. Of course, it will have courses on how corporates look at this phenomenon, what are the new metrics they are devising to assess themselves. Gone is the pure monetary profit and loss as the basis of success of corporates today. They're looking at new indices, how they fare against those, because soon they will be forced to change if they don't change themselves. So one is the corporate aspect. You're a lawyer, so I don't need to tell you, climate litigation is the fastest growing litigation now globally.
Yes, sir.
So you have class action by Brazilian miners in UK courts against BHP. There is no state actor involved in this at all. Yet it is law, it is international law, it is public policy. So you can see that there are new areas of environment which are coming in. And I acknowledge my generation did not pay heed to environmental issues. But I'm happy that my students who are your age are all very keen on redressing the harm that my generation did to environment by your efforts. So if I had to make one area where the students are most interested, for example, the first batch that passed out, there were 44 students, of whom 12 wrote their final projects on environmental issues, which is the highest number, not on technology, not on health, not on international relations, not on law, but on environment. So you can see the groundswell of interest that is surging on environmental issues. And so you seem to fit into that. Wherever you are, pursue your interests. It's a growth area, and you will be both individually satisfied and also successful because it's a sunrise industry.
Thank you, sir. Sir, at the very same time, sir, I'm also preparing for civil services, sir.
All the best.
Best of luck, Chaitanya. And thank you. So Mansa wants to know if we have courses for working professionals. Well, we're very happy to get working professionals in. But like I said, it's a 2-year residential degree program. So happy to have you. But we could soon have courses for working professionals, but we don't have anything as of now. Hardik Sahani has also raised his hand. Hardik, Priyanka, can we unmute him, please? And Hardik, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, first of all, sir, it's such an honor to be able to speak to you. I too am looking at a career in diplomacy, but I guess I'm a little too early here. I just turned 18 a month ago. So my question is, the current state of the world, right? It's so volatile, and diplomacy itself is such a volatile field. The current issues that we're facing now, such as the trade war between India and Bangladesh or the environmental crisis, will change 4 or 5 years down the line. So how do we ensure that what we may learn in public policy stays relevant even after 5, 10 years of graduating?
It's an entirely valid question. You're just 18, and I applaud you for the foresight to ask this question. Having said that, many years ago, I met an Israeli foreign minister. And he said, Ambassador, this was when I was at the UN 2016 or something like this. Ambassador, you chose well. And I said, well, why? Well, why? He said, I looked at your CV. You specialized in the Middle East. The Middle East is not going out of fashion in terms of conflict in your lifetime or mine. So you chose well. I didn't know that was the reason, but this was his perception. Having said that, look, I don't know about environment. There was no such concept about environment, and forget about environment litigation, about environment, I thought Twitter was what birds did. But today, Twitter is a social media tool. So what did I learn? I learned how to upgrade myself regularly. And that's what a public policy course will teach you, that you have to keep yourself abreast. Nothing that you learn will be useful for you down the line. They say astronomy courses, 5 years, they're outdated. What you've learned in your master's in astronomy, in 5 years, you're going to be outdated. Similarly, there is only a shelf life for everything, but there's no shelf life for enthusiasm. There's no shelf life for having the foresight to keep yourself abreast of changing rules, upskilling yourself, improving your skill sets. And that's what a course like this teaches. And that's why we spend 2 years. Leadership, understanding, absorbing, making it a part of your life cannot be taught online. And therefore, we don't have online skills of the sort that some friends are asking, because we believe in investing. Those 2 years are an investment of life, not for a livelihood, but for a lifetime. And that's the difference that we bring about in our educational approach compared to the others. So don't worry, all of us, if you had told me that there was something called a mobile telephone, I would have laughed when I was your age at 18. There was no such thing. Doesn't make us redundant when mobile phones came. We learned to adjust, adapt, and adopt these things. So that's what you're required to do. And that's what you will learn if you have an open mind and allow different views to permeate your thinking.
Right.
And if I may add another question.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Sure.
Do you think studying in a country like ours, since we're developing at a very good pace right now, versus studying public policy in developed countries such as like Sciences and Po in France or in the US, do we sort of have an advantage over those institutions?
Yeah. So first of all, public policy is always region or country specific because the stakeholders are different, the pulls and pressures are different, and the complexities are different. That's number one. Number two is there is no exposure like the exposure you get here. Let me tell you, if you learn to drive in India, you can drive all over the world. You try learning to drive in the US or Canada and come and drive in India, you'll have a big challenge. So, I mean, I'm just trying to give you an example, but the issue is that very few places have the diversity or the breadth of exposure that you can get in India. Purely because from a public policy angle, the stakeholders are the broadest in India. The only other country which has a population and the diversity the diversity in regions, etc., is China, but it's not a democracy. So the number of stakeholders are cut there. In India is sui generis. There is no other country with a billion plus population striving in some ways, not fully satisfactory, but trying to be a democracy because it's a work in progress. Public policy is only a reflection of how a democracy is. So you may learn the tools somewhere else, but let me tell you, as a practitioner, I'm not a great fan of theory land. I believe that you should know the theory, but the practice also, there is a great divergence between the theory and the practice. And what you should learn from theory is to innovate and adjust yourself when it doesn't go right. If everything went right, you don't need a human being to course correct. There would be an algorithm to sort this out. So Hardik, I would say that anytime you have a choice between a very good school in India and certainly on public policy and somewhere else in the world, certainly choose the Indian one, because the French experience will never be as satisfactory as the Indian one.
Thanks, Hardik. Thank you. Okay, very quickly, there's a question on what's the criteria for admission? Is there an entrance and when will it be conducted?
So, Manika, you've been giving me a tough time. You may answer this question.
The criteria for admission is an application. You can go check it out. Priyanka, who's here with us, can possibly put, a link for you here, and you can go check out the application process. That is the entrance, and then there is an interview conducted by a panel. If you go and see our advisory board and our leadership team, there is a panel comprised of advisory board members and the leadership team. And they do an interview. And as soon as you fill your application is processed. It goes through a certain amount of scrutiny. And if the application is cleared, then you appear for your interview. And if you clear both, then you come to the Kautilya School of Public Policy. It's on right now, but we're literally sort of at our final leg. So if you do want to, please go ahead and apply right now. You did speak about a lot of jobs right in the beginning, and I just want to, because there is a question from Mahima Sharma about jobs in the corporate sector, because she feels that in public policy and, with a background in political science, etc., most jobs are in government. And you did speak about Uber and Netflix and Amazon. So if you want to just speak a little bit more about how corporates are delving into public policy.
So let me put it out upfront that the largest number of our students are being offered corporate jobs. It's not in the government sector. Governments, by definition, are slow moving. They take a longer process to complete that. So the largest amount of jobs are actually in the corporate sector. About 40 to 45% of our students are joining corporates. So you name the corporate, if it's fast growing, if it is on the cutting edge, it will have a public policy division because it needs to understand what are the regulations which are coming into being, how do they impact their investments, what are the risks involved, How do they hedge those risks? All these are choices. Choices by definition are based on a judgment call of what the regulations are likely to be, what's the trajectory of those regulations, and based on a final decision of weighing the pros and cons. All these are skills that you don't learn in an engineering course or in a technical course. You learn in a multidisciplinary course like public policy. And that's why the requirement of many corporates to hire students from the public policy space.
Right. Rahul wants to ask a question. Rahul, please go ahead. Priyanka, can we unmute him? I think we can take Hardik off and get Rahul in. Yeah. Rahul, go ahead.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for the opportunity. So my question is very specific. I believe the job and after course employability is matter a lot for any individuals. So having working experience of more than 10 years with law enforcement agency as a digital forensic investigation strategy and investigative consultant, I had great opportunity working with income tax, ED, NIA, and some more elite agency. In last year, I decided to work for corporates. I joined India's largest business family, advised on strategy and all. I felt throughout this journey last year somewhere lack of some corporate skills, and I was planning to go for similar kind of course which can add more value to my past experiences, and I am figuring out to join this institute. My question is to understand whether is it worth going for this, because if you see the financial numbers, I would say that is great whatever I was getting, and I just want to understand what is the scope after adding this degree in my forte and skills which I will grab throughout the course, how this will be value added, and also in terms of enhancing my professional employability other than just position.
Right. So Rahul, you have immense experience of a decade, and we have several students who have similar, not exactly. We had a student who was 47 years old last year. So it didn't deter him from doing a course, upgrading his skills and going back to what he was doing or doing better. That said, we have a large number of students, and I mentioned about 60% who have work experience. May not be as long as you, but whether it is 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, it's always a challenge to come back to academics to upgrade skills. Now, I think I had mentioned in the beginning, our goal is not to upgrade specific skills, but to broaden your horizons so that you get into leadership positions and you are able to gain a lifetime of exposure and experience rather than a livelihood. People like you, Rahul, could walk into any job already. But the question is that are you ready for the next level of leadership in whatever you are taking? And are you confident of that? That's the change that a course like this will bring about in you, that when you go back, it's not for the next job, but for the next 5 levels of moving up the scale, you feel confident because you've learned a process. That process works repeatedly. It just has to be practiced diligently. So what we are all about is improving processes, engendering confidence, increasing your skills. So what is the skill? Let me give you example which I've given previously. Writing skills, oral communication skills, presentation skills, skills of negotiation. All this, I'm not saying that you don't know. It's just that when to use what is the challenge for all of us. Many of us know everything. We are overloaded with skills. But the challenge is when to speak, when to be reticent, when to lower our voice, when to shout very loudly. It all is a matter of judgment. So what such courses do is engender better judgment by making you understand broader issues. In fact, we have a course called leadership. What it does is it's taught by a Harvard professor, Professor Moshik Temkin. He teaches how leaders across history have addressed challenges in different situations. So he takes, in the Indian example, he takes issues of Baba Saheb Ambedkar and Gandhiji, how they address different challenges using different techniques, coming to different solutions. It takes Napoleon, it takes Mao Zedong, it takes Nelson Mandela, FDR, etc. So what do you learn from all these? You learn that there is a commonality that can be used among leaders. If that helps you imbibe and engender certain responses to certain situations rather than knee-jerk reactions, that's a skill you've learned. So I can keep giving you multiple such examples, but investing in yourself, Rahul, is the best investment you can do. So don't hesitate to invest in yourself, whether you do our course or any other course. Invest in yourself, upgrade yourself, improve your skills, and then you will see that your rise is faster than what it was before.
Thanks so much,
She said,
Rahul.
thank you so much.
Thanks a ton. So as we come to the close of this session, you've already spoken about, Ambassador, about how you personally and even at Kautilya, we are far more interested in the practicality of skills. But there is a question about if you can elaborate on the weightage we accord to evidence-based public policies and the tools therein. And added to that is that what is the future of law students in public policy?
Right. So evidence-based public policy is the buzzword. So it's integrated into our course curriculum. And by that, what I mean. So all our students, whether they studied law, whether they studied engineering, all have to study microeconomics because economics is ground level reality. I was one of those fortunate ones who never studied economics but got away with public policy. But the world has changed. If I had to go through it again, I'm now making all of them study microeconomics because it's based on data. Similarly, everybody does courses in statistics based on data. These are all compulsory courses. So there's a whole set of compulsory courses on fundamentals of finance, again, based on figures, numbers. So there are, out of the 15 compulsory courses, about 5 or 6 are based on evidence, how to collect evidence. We have a course on where to collect data from. What are the public sources available? What are the private sources available? We have databases for people to play about with, to find details, etc., and to get familiarized with how do you use data, how do you access databases. This is one area. There's another area when all of our students have to do research. So as part of their final project, they have to do a research project. And for that, they have to go into the field, whatever they want. It could be database, it could be qualitative. You have to go collect data, assess it, assimilate it, and then write a project of 10 to 12,000 words. And then you have to defend it in a viva. So you learn all these skills of how data is very important. If data is the new oil, you are the new oil person, Rahul.
There is a question on the fee structure, Avinash. Priyanka will get in touch with you and let you know all about that. But Sankhadweep has raised his hand, so if we can unmute him and he can ask his question and we can wrap up after that. Priyanka?
Go ahead, Sankadeep. Unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Jai Hind, sir.
Jai
Jai
Hind.
Hind.
Sir, can the recent visit of the Honorable Prime Minister to Egypt, known as the country of pyramids, can change India's foreign policy? And if so, what kind of change?
So, foreign policy has, it's not a public policy question, but I will answer it because
Yes, sir.
one thing you learn in public policy is don't say no comment. Always try and answer the question. So let me try and answer your question. Although ordinarily people will say this is out of syllabus. Nothing is out of syllabus in public policy. So I will answer that question. So foreign policy has two components. One is substance. Other is public diplomacy. Some call it style. So substance and style go together. Pageantry and content go together. You can't have more of one at the expense of the other. So what are the pyramids reflective of? The pyramids are reflective of an ancient civilization. If you go to a country, if you acknowledge that there are good qualities in them, that they were once upon a time amongst the most thriving civilizations in the world, what are you doing? You are paying tribute to them without saying so. You are in multiple ways acknowledging the greatness of their civilization. You are indicating that this is a civilization which has shone brightly in the past. The pyramids are 3,000 years old. Can you tell me of many monuments anywhere in the world which are 3,000 years old and standing at that height? There aren't many. So there is no harm in emphasizing publicly certain aspects of our ties with another country. If your question is, does this change fundamentally everything? No, it doesn't. And don't expect countries to change fundamentally towards each other. It takes years, it takes decades. Let's not forget, our ties with US today are booming. But when I was your age, US was a bad word because they had sent the 7th Fleet into the Indian Ocean. We were seeing that how they were supporting Pakistan, they were arming Pakistan. We were a democracy, they were an autocracy. Yet the US was seen as supportive of them. So it's taken us 30, 40 years of effort to turn the big ship around. So Egypt and India are two civilizational states with a history, and a history where collaboration was the norm. Frankly, we don't have any competition with Egypt in most things. We have commonalities of some areas of interest. Both are countries which are developing. Both are countries which want to see themselves as leaders of the global south. Egypt is known in the Arab world as Dunya. Dunya means in Arabic, mother of the world. And why do they call themselves the mother of the world? Because in the Arab world, anything that happens to Egypt has a reverberation all across the Arab world. There are 350 or so Arabs in the world, of whom 100 million plus are Egyptians. They're all over the Gulf. They're all over where Arabic is spoken. If you watch, Egyptian dialect is perhaps the most popular dialect everywhere because all TV serials are spoken using Egyptian dialect. So most other country people can understand Egyptian Arabic, but Egyptians need not understand the other dialects because that's what it is. Egypt is a major force in the Arab world. They are in our extended neighborhood. We have very good ties with the Arab world. Look at our ties booming with the Gulf countries. We have 7 million Indians in the Gulf, all in Arabic speaking countries. So it's good to have good ties with prospective areas of cooperation, and there are some areas we don't agree with them. That's all right. We agree to disagree and continue our things. So let's not forget, Egypt and India have a history of working together, whether it is now, whether it's after independence, whether it is as part of the non-aligned world. There are many commonalities. We are both developing countries with similar challenges. We've moved far ahead of Egypt today, but that doesn't make us very different from other developing countries who see us as a leader. And what's the harm in being a friend of somebody who wants to be your friend? In diplomacy, every friend counts.
So, I mean, there couldn't be a better podcast or a better lesson in international relations or diplomacy. But I do want to end with one last question about public policy. I don't know the name because the person's just being identified as Lenovo Tab, but Lenovo Tab wants to know what's the future of law students in public policy.
So the future of law students in any policy is very bright because it's the basis of all policy. Without law, there is no policy. I was just mentioning about how climate litigation is one of the fastest growing areas, but that's at the global level. Look at any policy that is formulated at a national level or even below. It's all couched in legalese. It's all based on our constitution. It all requires careful explanations. So the lawyers are the interlocutors who explain public policy to people, who couch public policy in a manner that it doesn't go against the fundamentals of our constitution, and who are there to interpret it should there be disputes. So the future of lawyers is bright and shining. If you choose to do public policy, it'll be brighter.
Right. Thanks so much, Ambassador Akbaruddin, and thank you everyone else. I think we'll end it here. I think we've gone much beyond an hour. So thanks so much. And if you have any questions, you can go to our website or Priyanka will be in touch with you. And we leave it there. Thank you. Good night.